It's been 213 days since the last time the Indianapolis Colts played a football game. That all changes in 3 days as they head to Orchard Park, New York, to take on the Buffalo Bills for the first preseason game. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Horseshoe Show here on Search Sports TV. I am Jack Rizzo. Joining me today is Colts writer for Fan Nation via Sports Illustrated, along with co-host of the Horseshoe Huddle podcast, Drake Wally. Drake, how you doing, man? It's an honor having you.
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. I'm ready to talk some Colts football. I catch your show every chance I get. So actually, it's an honor to be on the show. And thank you so much for the invitation, Jack. I'm excited.
Oh, that means a lot, man. Yeah, I am so ready to talk Colts football. It's been a long off season from the coaching process to the draft, and now this whole Jonathan Taylor thing, which is I think driving all of us crazy at this point. We've all talked about it in all of our shows, and it's just a crazy thing. But so first up, before we talk about like training camp and everything, do have some breaking news regarding the Colts. Obviously, something that just took place. Of course, the Colts had a visit with Kareem Hunt today, the former running back of the Cleveland Browns and the Kansas City Chiefs. Um, yeah, so and he went to visit with the Colts. Obviously, the running back room is very thin right now with Jonathan Taylor out, with Zach Moss probably being out till early in the season, with Deion Jackson apparently dealing with something as well. Had a visit with the Saints. Colts offered him a contract, as it was reported. No contract. Kareem apparently was not enough money, and Kareem Hunt is leaving Indianapolis as of tonight. So, Drake, what do you think of this? Like, do you think Kareem Hunt would have been a reasonable addition for the Colts, or do you think he's more so just like a camp body or just like depth for the running back position?
That's a really good question because I think that when Zach Moss went down with an injury and then you've got Deion Jackson didn't practice. And so, they bring in Kenyon Drake, they bring in, Kareem Hunt for potentially discussing contracts. And I think he would have been outright the best running back and, minus Jonathan Taylor. I mean, Zach Moss isn't better. Kenyon Drake's not better. I mean, Kareem Hunt would have been the best running back, but it's interesting because the Saints didn't offer him the money he wanted. He said the Colts offered him more, and now he's fielding other offers. Now, I think that he's just taking them all in. He's not making a decision right now, but I think that it's more than a camp body. I think that it's actually to push for that running back 2 spot.
Yeah, that's true. Also, really sad what happened with Marlon Mack. Tore his Achilles. That's the second time in 4 years that's happened for him. I loved Marlon Mack in Indy. I called him Mack Attack. That was my nickname for him before Jonathan Taylor came, obviously. But sucks for him. He was a really good runner. I remember that Kansas City game on Sunday night in 2019, and unfortunately he's out for the season. I've always been rooting for him, and I'm just really sad to see him, be out for the year. But
Well,
so
he would have made a great. I always think of how good him and Taylor could have been with Phillip Rivers. So I'm right there with you. It sucks. Just hoping he can bounce back, but that's really brutal to have happen twice.
yeah. He's still only 27, so he still has time to turn it around. I thought he would have been older. I feel like he's been around for quite a while now. But so before we talk about Cam, one other thing. I mean, obviously this has been the biggest news maybe in the NFL so far since training camp, the Jonathan Taylor situation. It appeared during the offseason that this wasn't going to be like that big of a deal going into camp, that JT would still play, there wouldn't be any issues. Going in camp, and give a shout out here to Sarah, always supporting us on our shows.
There she
Sarah,
is.
we really appreciate you. Trust me. And why not bring in Dalvin Cook? It's just too much money. He doesn't really fit. I mean, Kareem Hunt is a good pass blocker and a good pass catcher. I just don't really see. I think Dalvin Cook, I think, costs more money. I think Dalvin Cook wants to go to a winner. And as much as I love the Colts, I just don't think anybody is viewing us as a Super Bowl contender in 2023. Just the harsh reality of it.
Yeah,
Um,
and Dalvin Cook, like you said, he's looking for more of a prominent role. And right now, you're battling with Jonathan Taylor. They're not going to bring anybody. I don't think they're going to bring in anybody that's past Kareem Hunt's like caliber. Anyway, I was kind of surprised when they brought him in. Actually, I was like, wow, they're really taking this serious. But you're just hoping that it's for the running back 2 role. I think that they're going to try to keep Taylor there. I just think that maybe that ankle injury was a little bit more nagging than they thought it was going to be.
Especially considering that we just signed Kenyon Drake to be in our backfield, and we signed Rick. Yep, Justin Hunley, former worked with Shane Steichen in Philly, had I think 18 career carries there. Ricky Seals Jones. I mean, we have like 25 tight ends on the roster now. I don't understand that. So we've added all these tight ends, but still no veteran corner, which really does surprise me. Um, but yeah, so just probably I think Ricky's probably a camp body because Jelani's banged up, Wally Cox is banged up, uh, Will Mallory's banged up as well. Like it feels like we have so many tight ends though. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, I really don't I actually cannot wrap my head around the reason for just continuously signing tight ends. I know you have a couple that are down, but they're really pushing to see whoever's going to be right behind Jelani Woods. I mean, I don't think that the Colts are as confident in Mo Alley Cox as they used to be. He has not even eclipsed 100 catches, and he's been in the league for 6 seasons. So I mean, he's really underperformed his 3-year, $17.5 million contract. So I think that that's a big reason why they're bringing in so many. But yeah, you're just thinking, holy cow, how many more tight ends can you possibly add to the roster?
Something interesting though is that Jelani Woods isn't the number one tight end listed on the Colts' first depth chart. They have both Mo Alley and Kylan Granson listed ahead of him. Now, I'm a big fan of Kylan Granson, what he can bring to the table. But I mean, Jelani Woods, I mean, he's 6'7", he's perfect quarterback for a guy like, or tight end for a guy like AR, perfect fit for Shane Steichen's scheme. I don't understand why he's behind them, but I'm not going to pay too much attention to the depth chart because they have Jonathan Taylor listed and he hasn't even practiced yet.
Yep. Very good point. The depth chart's a work in progress right now. There hasn't even been a preseason game yet. So good point, Jack.
Yeah. Well, I'm devastated that the game's not going to be televised. That's pretty sad. The final two games will be televised, so obviously I'll watch those. But I'm going to be in Boston anyways. So I can't really watch it to begin with. But yeah, pretty yeah. Let's get back to the JT thing real quick. So obviously this injury appears to be much more serious than we thought. I mean, EJ Speed had the same procedure done after the season, and it took him. It's only supposed to take 4 to 6 weeks to recover, and here we are about 7 months later, and apparently this is still an issue. Do you think this could be another different, like maybe like a re-aggravation of the injury, or is there just something wrong with JT? We're just for some reason taking that long to heal.
I think that it's either that they are just playing super duper safe with the guy. Because even Ian Rappaport, even though it was still very foggy with what he said, the details, he did say that, they want to get him off site to rehab the ankle and make, quote, 100% sure that, or absolutely sure that it's 100% ready for, he said, like the first game or something. So basically, he said that he personally thought, as big of an insider as he is, that look, they're going to keep it. They're just trying to make sure that ankle's good. But to argue the other side of it, Jack, you're talking about a running back who had stupid use in college. I mean, he had so many carries in college. Comes into the NFL, he's worked like a dog, you know. Excuse me. And then he has an ankle injury, which is the worst possible thing that can happen to a running back is those lower extremities. So it's like it could be a nagging thing where he might. I know Andrew on our show, he was like, I wouldn't even be surprised if you do see Jonathan Taylor on IR, to start the season. So maybe they're trying to bring in a guy that because they know, hey, there's a really good chance Jonathan Taylor's missing the first 6 weeks of the season. So we need to bring in a guy who can start. So I personally think it's just to make sure, but I'm also a positive guy. So we'll see what it is. But I do think I would lean on the side of they're just being sure that he's not going to hurt himself.
I think that's not being talked about enough. The fact of how much he was used in college. He had over, he had over 6,000 career yards in college, and he was used a lot. Like it's crazy. And Colts definitely used him a lot in 2021. I mean, look what happened the final 2 games of the season. The Raiders and the Jags both prepared for us to run with Jonathan Taylor because they knew we couldn't throw the ball, and they both beat us. So it shows how important JT is. But at the same time, I have never been a fan. I think you know this. I've never been a fan of paying running backs. Going back to like Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley, Devontae Freeman, David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott now. It seems like the majority of the time, these contracts just don't pan out. I don't think you should pay a running back for more than like a year or two because they could be great 1 year and then decline the next year. I mean, look what happened with Todd Gurley. Had 2 great years with the Rams. The next year was used a lot less, regressed, and then they cut him. So running back,
they didn't even use him in the Super Bowl either. They used C.J. Anderson.
C.J. Anderson. Oh my, that's a name I have not heard in a long time.
I know, right?
That's
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a good point.
I like our running backs. Like I'm a big fan of Evan Hull. He was the best pass catcher in college football last year. Also a solid pass blocker. Maybe that was why they're bringing Kareem Hunt in because he could be like a mentor for him, I guess, because their games are familiar in a way. But Zach Moss, I mean, kind of like I feel like a low potential guy. I don't really see a lot in Zach Moss. And this is actually the final year of his contract. I don't think they're going to keep him after this. Deion Jackson, we saw how good he was last year against Jacksonville. But even though obviously none of these running backs are even close to the level JT is at right now, in terms of the long-term future, I think it would be best not to pay JT, especially if you're going to pay Pittman. Pittman is by far the more important guy to extend right now. And I'm pretty sure you think the same way too. I number one receivers don't grow on trees, and if Pittman, you've mentioned this to me, if Pittman has like a great year next year, his value is going to probably go from what's like 17 to 19 million right now. It's like 22 to 24 million next year. So to me, you have to pay Pittman. And I would be very hesitant on paying JT, especially considering the fact that this injury seems to be a lot worse than originally anticipated.
Yeah, and the thing is, while you were saying that, I pulled up his college stats and his NFL stats. So when he was 18, 19, 20, and 21, well, 20 in college because he played 3 seasons, he had 299 rushes, 307 rushes, 320 rushes, and he also accompanied that with 42 total catches, which shows you right there, even in college, Jack, he wasn't a pass catching back. And then in the NFL, he's 21, 22, and 23. He has 232 rushes, 332 rushes, and 192. So if you just do the math, that's like 200, 500, 750. Let's see, 1,050, 1,350 in just 3 seasons and 3 seasons in the NFL, 3 seasons in college and 3 in the NFL. He's basically got over 1,800 total carries already. I mean, he's really been worn the heck out like already. So an injury like that, even if the Colts know deep down, it's not really that big of a deal. I bet you they're even still going, you know what? We don't care. Make absolutely sure he's good because we don't really need him out there. I mean, sometimes he hasn't even practiced in the past. So it's just one of those things where obviously training camp he has, but they're just, I think personally, they're taking their sweet time with him. They're making sure that he's ready to go because let's face it, Anthony Richardson, I think he's going to be great, but he's going to have a slower development to kick things off if he doesn't have Jonathan Taylor in the backfield with him. That's one of the things that makes them so dangerous is having AR then Jonathan Taylor behind him because it's going to throw a lot of linebackers off. You're not going to get that if it's Kenyon Drake, but you probably still make it work. But I'm just hoping, Jack, that it's on the side of just caution over anything else.
It depends. I mean, I don't like the fact that he's requested a trade. I don't want that in the locker room. Like play for the logo on the front, not the name on the back. I think it's just more so about him standing up for these other running backs. But I mean, we haven't mentioned this yet. His agent is an absolute psycho. It's like JT has not. I mean, JT isn't helping this, but his agent has made it about 100 times worse. And we all know this. Not even even non-Colts fans are saying that this agent is crazy. I don't even know how this guy is an agent. I know he got the Shaq Leonard contract done. I know that, but I mean seriously, like JT has I think changed his reputation in a matter of like 2 weeks from being a great guy who everybody loves him to now half the fan base including me that's okay with trading him, honestly. It's
Yeah, yeah. So a little insight on Melky Kawa, which is JT's agent. He really has a big name in the world of mixed martial arts. I'm a big UFC guy, like to an extent, and like he represented John Jones, who has been in numerous altercations with just breaking rules and everything else, drug use and or PEDs and stuff like that. And so he represented him, and in that world, you're more of a showman. Your trash talk is accepted a little more, And so he comes over from that world over to the NFL. Now, yes, he got the Shaq Leonard thing done, but it doesn't really sound like Shaq Leonard was too vocal. It sounds like Malkikawa did a pretty simple transaction. This is totally different. Shaq Leonard's value is not at the tank, at the bottom of the tank now. It seems like in a matter of weeks, JT has, kind of quote unquote diminished his reputation for now. But it seems like the running back value, Jack, over the last month has gone from like a B plus grade to a C minus, hinging on D. I mean, running backs are viewed now overnight, it seems like Dalvin Cook, we don't need you. Zeke Elliott, we don't need you. You're expendable. They're more expendable than I've ever seen any position, like in recent memory. So I think that he's also playing into that, and he's like really trying to get Taylor that contract to make himself a name in the NFL, but also to get his client a huge payday. Look, I think it's going to be between 13 and 14 million. If the Colts agree to a contract, it'll be like 4 years, 13.5 or something. He's not going to reset the market and beat Christian McCaffrey's average. It's just not happening.
I just don't feel comfortable giving him that considering his injury status. I mean, I know the Colts they might be okay with it, but I mean, Jim Irsay has a history of paying his homegrown stars, and if he's not paying this one, then there's clearly a problem outside of this. Now, what I actually have down here, one of my notes, actually contrasts your opinion, and I wonder that do the Colts trust their young running backs enough? Because if not, are they going to rush JT back earlier than he should come back? That's something I'm kind of thinking about because I don't know. I just have this opinion that JT being on PUP, this is like him being like just like extremely cautious, and I don't know if the Colts want to like bring him back like as soon as possible. I mean, it seems that Shane Steichen hasn't really given that great of an explanation about what's going on with JT, but I mean, he can't really because he's like the lead. He has to worry about what's happening on the field at camp, not what's going on off of it. But I don't know. I'm just kind of getting tired of it. Like, I just wish it would stop. And honestly, I think what's going to happen is JT's just going to play out the final year of his contract. And as Sarah says here, I hope this happens. We pay Pittman and Grover Stewart because those two guys we definitely should pay.
They'd make the most sense. I mean, Grover Stewart, he would without question be the cheapest. And I've seen people say, well, hold the phone. The guy's like 30 years old. Hey, look, defensive tackles, they're different. All right. They play well into their 30s at a very high level. They really can. I mean, these guys could be 36 freaking years old, Jack, and still be one of the top guys in the NFL, top 10 defensive tackle. So it's actually a good idea to extend Grover Stewart now. And back to what you said earlier, you made a great point, is that with Michael Pittman, it's like, look, he did technically say, I don't, quote unquote, well, this is paraphrasing, but I don't really care. I'm here to play. The deal will get done when it gets done. Michael Pittman could not have had a more opposite response than Jonathan Taylor. He was just like, I don't care, dude, about an extension. I just want to play. But here's the reality of the situation. Andrew thinks the same thing. He's probably going to go out there this year. He's going to establish a connection with Richardson because Steichen's going to get Richardson more day one ready than anyone's going to expect. And he is going to get that 95, 100 yard or 100 reception year. And then he's going to eclipse 1,000 yards because it's more of a vertical offense. And he's probably going to have like 6 or 7 touchdowns. And he's going to be maybe bigger than he's ever been in an offense. And so it's like, then you got to think, okay, then you have no choice but to either let him, stay or let him fly away. And it's like, at that point, his price tag has probably gone up a crisp bare minimum $5 million a year. He goes from a $19 million a year guy to 24, 25, just because you didn't extend him when you should have. So I think that's number one. I think Stewart's number 2, and I think Taylor's number 3. And the reason I say Taylor's number 3 is because he has no leverage. He has absolutely no leverage. He's just going to sit there, and he's just going to – who's going to pay him as much as the Colts?
Nobody.
No, just not happening. And Irsay can change his mind like any human, but he said, we're not trading him now. We're not trading him in October, which is when the deadline is. Like, he basically said, nope, we're not trading Taylor. So Jonathan Taylor's predicament is interesting, and his agent, like you said, while he's being crazy, he's also doing his job very well because he's getting into the mind of his client to the point where this Jonathan Taylor almost overnight is okay to be the guy that's in the dark light. He's okay to be the guy that's seen as the villain for a moment, as long as he gets the deal done. So we'll just have to see. It's very dramatic, though.
Yeah. I mean, the one saving grace of Jonathan Taylor is that he's still only 24. I honestly, I would honestly think he's older because I feel like he was at Wisconsin forever. And then now he's been in the NFL for 3 years. So you think he's like 25 or 26. But so to go back on the Pittman thing, so you said about the connection with AR. Well, there's another Colts receiver that I think is going to have a better connection. You could see him in the top left corner of your screen. Maybe my favorite Colt on the entire team, Alec Pierce, a guy that I loved way before he even got drafted by the Colts. I mean, I love that whole Cincinnati team in 2021. But Alec Pierce, from what I've heard, has been dominating at camp, winning the one-on-one reps. He's been way more active in 11 on 11 this year than he was last year. And we saw that ridiculous catch that he made, 60 yards on 7 on 7, probably AR's best throw so far in camp. Although that Granson corner on Sunday was pretty sweet too. I know you're a big fan of Alec Pierce too, Drake. How big of a role do you think he's going to have in this offense this year?
So his ceiling is really the only question, because I'm right there with you, Jack. You got a guy that's like 6'3", he's like 220 pounds, and typically guys that are that large of a receiver, they're not a 4.4 second 40-yard speed. That's Alec Pierce. He is equally as devastatingly quick. He's very fast. And if you give him a moment in the open field, he can absolutely beat your secondary with his feet. He's lightning quick. And so you mix that with an ability to take the top off of a defense, have the vertical aspect to jump up and get a 50-50 ball, and the strength to win those battles for the possession. You really have a hard time finding negatives. Here's where it was, though, with Pierce, is he was a vertical threat in Cincinnati. And that's that. And as you know, Division One, you give me Georgia last year. Give me Georgia last year. Everyone's like, well, they could be the worst NFL team. That's how good they are. You put the worst NFL team against Georgia last year, I bet I would put my money on the worst NFL team to win the game. Okay, Stetson Bennett is not going to go out there and beat an NFL defense. I'm sorry. So I understand that college can be competitive, but all Alec Pierce had to do was run down the field, okay, a lot of the time. So his route running was incredibly jagged when he got to the league. And last year wasn't a year, unfortunately, where he could work on it very much. So what they ended up doing is this year he's been working on his route running a lot more. And he's been blanketing Richardson wherever he goes, because, I don't know, he is a perfect weapon for Richardson. They match each other's strengths to a T. Richardson's really good at throwing deep. Alec Pierce is incredible at catching the deep ball. Richardson can scramble out and cause plays to happen. Pierce is quick enough to make those plays happen and down the field. They're both a big play waiting to happen, man. So I think you're right there. I'm right there with you. I think that he has the potential to have an absolutely incredible year based off of last year. I think we're talking like 65 catches, 70 catches, maybe like 850, 900 yards, but I would say like 6 touchdowns or so. He's gonna cause more plays to happen underneath too, because he's gonna take the top off of defenses.
Yeah, I would say this is a bold prediction, but considering his vertical threat and other aspects, I think there's a chance that he can be one of the top leaders in the NFL in yards per reception next year. But
Yeah.
something about I almost never agree with Kush. You know who Kush is, right? On Twitter. But one of his opinions that I actually agree with is that Alec Pierce is going to benefit in this offense because of the vertical threat. Last year, Matt Ryan couldn't throw for more than 10 yards, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Foles, I mean, threw it felt like 8 interceptions in the 2 games he played. And Sam Ehlinger, that's not really his style, is to throw deep. But even with Minshew, Pierce is going to benefit in this scheme. And I think they should try screen passes with him, maybe quick slants. But the offense he was working with last year was not his style at all. Maybe the worst offense he could have been working with last year.
Yeah, and one of the things about Matt Ryan, it was almost like in the NFL quarterbacks, it's not like in the NBA where it's a steady decline in efficiency. It just, one season you have it, the next you fall off a cliff. Look at Peyton Manning. He had 17 interceptions and 9 touchdowns his last year. He was horrid. And previously he had over 30 touchdown passes. So it just happens overnight. Matt Ryan previously, I believe, was one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL in his last season with Atlanta. And he just could not get the ball out quick enough. Defenses all of a sudden were too quick for him. And then you get a guy like Pierce that benefits from someone who can throw deep. Nobody on the team could. Nick Foles could, but he just didn't throw it to Pierce. He threw it to the other team. So it was just a real mess for Alec Pierce. Of course, again, with the right play caller and the right quarterback, the right system, which he's in, all those check off, it's all up to him at this point. He's literally laid out right now to have a great year. Everything is right there, set up, ready to go for him.
Yeah, Frank Reich's also not really a vertical scheme guy at all.
No, short ball, dude.
All right, so obviously, I know we've waited a while for this, but let's talk about what all Colts fans are talking about, the quarterbacks, and specifically one Anthony Richardson, who obviously has had his ups and downs in camp. You and Andrew, I've said this too. that he was going to have days where he looks great and he's going to have days where he looks bad. He's had
Mm-hmm.
some days where he hasn't looked great, but then you had this past weekend, the Saturday and Sunday practices where he looked really good. So I know you've been to a couple practices, but what is AR impressed? What has impressed you about AR? But also, what are you when you look at him? What do you like? He needs to work on this, and or he's gonna have a rough rookie year.
You know, obviously his arm strength, his deep accuracy, the way that he can make any throw from any body position. That is just ridiculous. In fact, that 60-yard pass you were talking about, he was rolling to the left. So he's rolling this way and had to, with his legs set, he had to pivot and then take his body across and flick it. He didn't even hook it back and throw. He just flicked it. 60 yards, he flicks it like that, running the opposite way. So he's not going to struggle getting the ball out. He's not going to struggle with deep accuracy. I think that he shows a very underrated pocket presence. He feels pressure very well. You can see he doesn't even have to see it. He just knows when to move. And he's one of those guys that as soon as something touches him, he's getting away from it. And he's very quick. So those are things that were already there. He's very hard to tackle. So that's something else. And he runs very well and he's very fast. But as far as what he needs to work on, footwork. He needs to just keep doing that. There's days where you can see that he's improving. Then there's days, where he has struggled. It's just been really, footwork hasn't lined up with when he's timing his throws, or he's throwing it a little too early, or the ball, it sails because he's still working on that arm accuracy. Because even he said, Jack, in college, I didn't really use my feet. I could just win with my arm. You can't do that in the NFL. You absolutely will. You'll be destroyed. Like people will just,
Yeah.
they'll pick you off all day. Like you're going to be schemed around with the defense knowing you're going to do that. You're going to throw 4 interceptions. So he's improving. He's got to get everything from top, middle, and bottom to sync up. And once that happens, I think they're going to feel ready for him to start week 1. Everything is pushing. Every sign I'm seeing is pointing towards them wanting him out there week 1. But it's all going to be. It's all going to be so interesting to see the preseason, because then you're going to get a little taste, and it's not against the people he knows. It's against teams that he doesn't play against every single day in practice.
Can we please finally win a week 1 game? I've still never seen a week 1 win in my entire life.
It's going to be tough. It's Jacksonville, but we'll see.
Jack, they're one of the most underrated teams, I think, in the AFC.
Yeah,
they have a chance to be number 4 behind Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincinnati.
Yes.
The other thing is it's going to be interesting if teams play like deep on air. They take away that deep ball and they make them win underneath. That's what the smarter teams are going to do. They're going to try to make them win like that, and we're going to have to see what happens. But I'm all for starting him week 1. I want to see the preseason first. Like I've never done film study in my entire life, but I'm going to be doing it for this preseason because I want to see if AR is ready or not. If he sits week 1, I honestly won't be too bummed about it because, the kid's 21 years old. He's going to have lots of time here in Indy. We're going to see him a lot. If we don't see him out there week 1, it's not the end of the world. It's not like we're never going to see him again. But, and the nice thing, too, is that we actually have a capable backup. Like, Gardner Minshew he might be, like, the best backup in the entire league, if you even want to call him that. So, and he's not going to bring anything special, but he's going to bring you at least consistency, and he's worked with Shane Steichen before, so that's going to help his case. But so a few more things here, and then we'll wrap this up. But Shaq Leonard, I absolutely love this guy. He you could tell he just like loves football. That's a really broad statement, but more than like anybody else, he just loves football. So energetic, always. Everybody, I think every Colts fan loves Shaq Leonard. I don't think I've ever met one that doesn't. His play, his aggressiveness, his turnovers. I think this front seven is already really strong. I think the one thing we're missing is that turnover guy. And if Shaq Leonard is healthy week 1, this could be like one of like the top 10 or 5 front sevens in the league. And we need that because our secondary is not going to be great this year. But Shaq Leonard has done everything in camp so far. I think he surprised all of us, even the most optimistic Colts fans. I feel like he is surprised so far. I still don't think we're going to see him at all in the preseason. I think the Colts are going to want to rest him up. But I am impressed with Shaq Leonard, and I think there's a pretty decent chance he's going to be out there week 1 with no limitations.
Yeah, and he's like you. I love that you said, even the most optimistic person has to be surprised. Absolutely, I didn't expect him to be out there during training camp. I expected in training camp, but I thought to myself, there's that chance, that you're going to see him out there. Once they put all the pads on, he's going to be limited. That was the big thing. What happens when the pads go on? And so he's out there. Oh, and he's also making plays. There was a play where he threw. I was actually there. AR Anthony Richardson read a very nice. I believe it was a dig, or no, it would have been an in. I think it's either it's a dig route, like probably a 10-yard dig, and he threw the ball, and he had it on the money. I thought he did anyway. And Shaq Leonard jumped up, skied up, freaking batted it. Didn't even think he was going to get it, and then it like falls in his lap, and he wasn't ready for it. He batted it straight down, and then he dropped it, and he lost it. He like started pounding the ground. And if you're just like a random fan that's not a Colts fan, or you don't follow the team or know who Shaq Leonard is, you'll see that tantrum and you'll be like, wow, dude. It's like, no, that is exactly what you want to see him doing. You want him to be the Shaq Leonard that is the maniac, the guy that they call the maniac. That's why he is known that way. He does not like to screw up. He doesn't like making mistakes. To see him angry at himself for dropping the ball, to see him smiling and laughing and yelling and just being energetic, that is the first telltale sign that he's feeling way better. So I think he's on the right track. There's still going to be, everyone still needs to put their expectations, realistic, because this is a huge injury he was recovering from. So keep the expectations realistic, because they also aren't competing this year. So they may be more, slow with Shaq to get him back in there if they really feel like he's not ready. So anyway, at the end of the day, all signs, Jack, they're pointing towards Shaq Leonard is recovering at a very nice pace.
One of the most impressive stats I've seen when looking through them, in 2021, he had 8 forced fumbles. He had 8 forced fumbles and no strip sacks. All those forced fumbles came in the open field, whether he punches the ball out. He is always looking for the football. I mean, he's not focused on the player. He's focused on the ball. And it's kind of ironic that he's called an off-ball linebacker, but he's always on the ball. But I love Shaq. He's the turnover guy if we have him. He's not going to be elite in coverage. Like, he's not a good cover corner, really. But that's really all you can knock him for. I mean, he's a playmaker. He's the heart and soul of that Colts defense. And I really hope we can see him out there, because they're a better football team when he's out there.
Yes, and the thing is, he's so good at forcing turnovers that I've even said this, that he can get quarterbacks to make mistakes where others get turnovers, just because he's a matter of, in the quarterback's line of vision. Like he will force mistakes to happen where he's not even touching the ball. So that's how good he is. This defense is way better with him. And lastly, EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin, I think that they're good linebackers in their own right. They'd make a solid tandem, but with Shaq Leonard in there, with those two, that's a top 10 linebacking core in the entire league.
Yeah, absolutely. I think EJ Speed is really underrated, and he's going to be really solid. And this is going to help bail out the secondary, because it's probably not going to be great, but is there anybody who in the I know some of the corners have been solid, like Daryl Baker, I've heard has been really good. I know you asked him about which receiver is the toughest to cover, and he said Alec Pierce, which I wouldn't want to cover him either, but him, I think Jalen Jones from Texas A&M has also been pretty solid. Some of the Kenny Moore was playing really well in camp before he got hurt. But do you think the corners have a chance to be better than we thought in the beginning of the season?
I think if they are, yes, to answer your question, because Juju Brents, as I tweeted out, he's freaking huge. The man's he's like ridiculously large, like wide. For his wingspan is so massive that he fits the zone perspective that Gus Bradley's trying to go with. He clogs passing lanes. So I think that, number one, people need to stop sleeping on Juju Brents' athleticism and Darius Rush's ball hawking ability. And Kenny Moore, once he recovers, he's going to shore up that slot corner. So I think this team does have a potentially underrated corner group, but I also think that they are, in some regards, rated where they should be, because they haven't proven anything. And really the only other veteran you have is Dallas Flowers. And Dallas Flowers played, I think, 1 game last season at corner. So I'm not saying that he hasn't had a good camp, but I'm saying that, yeah, outside of Kenny Moore, I mean, you're talking about a bunch of rookies, unproven guys like Daryl Baker Jr., who, to people that hadn't heard that his name was emerging from camp, you would have never known who he was. Like, it's no offense to him. It's just the truth. Like, that's how thin the Colts cornerback room is. And then bringing in Chris Lamons, he might not even make the roster. I mean, Josh Downs is out there roasting him in camp. So it's like, everyone was like, that's the veteran hire or the veteran signing. He might not even make it to the final roster. So we'll see. I think that they're more athletic and more capable than some think, Jack, but I also think that the expectations are that they're going to get roasted a few times, and it's going to happen. I mean, the NFL is just so brutal, and it's arguably the youngest defensive back room maybe in the league.
Yeah, 100%. There's definitely going to be games where they struggle, especially early in the season. But one quick question here before we wrap up, just like kind of like a really quick one. Which rookie has impressed you the most so far in camp?
We'll remove Anthony Richardson since that's the obvious answer. I would say Evan Hall. I think
Wow.
Evan Hall looks very, very capable, and he's in an offense where it just fits everything he does. He is Nyheim Hines, but he is Nyheim Hines plus the ability to deceive defenses, and he's also 5'11", 210 pounds, and a downhill runner. And he's a one-cut guy that can make you miss, and he's gone. And he'll break tackles. I mean, this dude honestly is the complete package for a running back, but he's very young. He comes from a bad offense from Northwestern, but Josh Downs was close, but I got to give it to Evan Hall. If we're not talking about Anthony Richardson, it's got to be Evan Hall because he's making a case that if everything falls through, he might be starting.
He was very impressive last year. He was like the one bright spot on that Northwestern team. They were absolutely horrible last year, and now we know what's been going. Now we just heard about what happened with like their coach or whatever. I don't really want to get into that, but so I think I think that's all I have for you, man. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you to everyone for watching, Sarah, for all the comments. Again, go follow Drake and Andrew of the Horseshoe Huddle podcast. Go follow Drake over at Twitter. I'll just give me 1 second here. There's his ad on Twitter right there.
There we are.
At D Wallster Drake. Yep. Or D Wallster Drake. Yeah. So for those of you watching, so Drake's gonna hop off now. I'm gonna stay on to talk about one thing real quick. But Drake, thank you so much for joining, man. Hopefully we can do this again and enjoy the rest of camp, my friend.
Absolutely, Jack. Thank you so much for having me on. We will be talking again soon, and everybody, go Colts.
Go Colts. That's right.
See you, buddy.
All right. Well, that was fun. Obviously, big thanks to Drake for coming on, writer for Fan Nation, Sports Illustrated. This has been like an inside story, but we need to get him more followers. That man is criminally underrated. Really, really good stories. Always interacting with us. Awesome that we have him in the Colts community. Now, I'm going to say one more thing before I hop off here, and it's not actually about football, but I want to talk about something that happened this past week regarding baseball. So the Baltimore Orioles have been a great story this year for baseball. They have been a very fun team to watch. They're a young team. They're leading the AL East. I went to Camden Yards early in July to go watch the Orioles play some games. But after what happened this week, it's safe to say I won't be rooting for the Orioles for a very long time. And the Orioles have been absolutely humiliated over this past week because of what they did to one of their broadcasters, man by the name of Kevin Brown. So during a recent game in Tampa Bay against the Rays in St. Petersburg, Kevin Brown was doing his pregame pregame show, just talk about how the Orioles had struggled at Tropicana Field, how they were doing better though this year, but how like they hadn't won a series there in like 6 years, and he didn't really say anything objectively wrong. He didn't really even offer like an opinion. He was just stating facts, and it was on like a graphic on the TV, so it was planned. But because of those comments, the Baltimore Orioles decided to suspend Kevin Brown. Absolutely, I'm still trying to figure out what he did wrong in the first place. But let me just say this to the Baltimore Orioles real quick. You guys humiliated yourselves almost 3 decades ago with what you did to John Miller, and now you're doing it again with Kevin Brown. And you can even put Gary Thorne in there as well. This is just a brutal decision. You guys have embarrassed Kevin Brown, your fans, and yourselves, and you should be absolutely ashamed of yourselves for what you have done. And to quote what the great Gary Cohen said a few days ago, if you guys don't want Kevin Brown, there are 29 other teams out there who do. Again, hoping, Kevin Brown does well. He comes back even stronger. If I were him, I wouldn't even want to go back to Baltimore to go do games there because, the way they treated him is absolutely ridiculous. Like, if they can't handle the truth. Like, he was literally just doing his job. Like, how is he supposed to do his job if he can't basically state facts? I mean, just for statistics, they suspended him. Absolutely ridiculous decision. I am so angry about it. Even the fans yesterday, Camden Yards, started chanting "Free Kevin Brown," and the Orioles blew the game yesterday. Could be started knowing as the Kevin Brown curse. But yeah, just wanted to offer my opinion on that. I know that's been a hot topic in the sporting world, but so thank you everyone for watching. Again, huge, massive shout out to Drake for coming on. Again, Colts writer for Fan Nation, for Sports Illustrated, co-host of the Horseshoe Huddle podcast with Andrew Moore. Great guy. Again, amazing content creator, but an even better person though. And thank you to Sarah for all the comments she gave us. Really appreciate you all tuning in. Join Eli and I for the 12th Horseshoe podcast tomorrow night. We'll talk about the first week of the preseason, the latest stories, some other news around the NFL, Hard Knocks as well. Yeah, and then also again, go follow. Obviously, go follow Drake on Twitter, D Drake. Go check out Eli and Jim show Sports with Mono that airs every Saturday at 11 a.m. And obviously, Eli and I with the 12th Horseshoe podcast every Thursday for now. Once the season comes, Tuesdays and Fridays. For Tuesday for a recap and Friday for a preview of every single week. And of course, my show, the Horseshoe Show, every Wednesday at 7. Thank you guys so much for joining. Jack Rizzo signing off here. See y'all tomorrow. Peace.